So thank you very, very much. So before we go to lunch, we have another speaker for you, Conor Kavanagh from Genesis, which is a strategic business and brand consultancy with a strong record in tourism over the years. So ask yourself the following questions, but don't answer out loud. How satisfied are your employees? How motivated are they? And do they understand their role within the organisation? How are they on their IQ, EQ and MQ? I'm still at a loss as to what MQ is, but to take us through some very, very bespoke research that's going to be published for the first time today within the Irish tourism and hospitality industry and how you compare to the national average, let's hand over to Conor. You're very, very welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be here this afternoon. So IQ, EQ and MQ, what exactly does that mean? I'm going to talk about that in some detail and give you some insight into what it means and also how the tourism industry in Ireland stacks up on these critical measures. But before I talk about that and some of the theory associated with it, let me just do a little bit of looking back. So I'm 20 years in this game in terms of consulting, and over those 20 years I've had the pleasure of doing a lot of work in tourism. It's a sector that I've always enjoyed working in. It's been extremely interesting, extremely diverse. I've had lots of different experiences, met all sorts of different people. But if I step back from it and all the work that I've done over the years, there's been one real constant that's always been present. And it won't surprise you that one of these major constants is people. So whether we've been looking at opportunities, challenges, changes, whatever it might be, people have always been part of what's been going on. And I've seen the ups and downs in it as well. I remember going back about the views about shortage of skills. I remember the debates about the dilution of Irish hospitality, the issues of succession. All these things have been existed. But there's challenges, but we all know, and everybody knows in this room, it is one of the core strengths, if not the core strength, the engine of Irish tourism. So the truism is, it has always been and it always will be at the heart of Irish tourism. And we're very lucky, actually, in terms of the cultivation and development of people, that we have many, many good initiatives, both within organisations and indeed, like with Fáilte Ireland in terms of the Employer Excellence Programme, many initiatives that actually really support the development of our people and the teams and so on and so forth. And though there are challenges, in terms of recruitment, remuneration, succession, and all those sorts of things, there is reason to be optimistic. The bad news is I'm not here to necessarily solve any of the problems that have been around for a long time. But what I am here to talk about is how we can support the people that we have that are in the industry already to perform to the best of their abilities. Because as I stand here, there are fantastic teams, fantastic managers doing the job right now, delighting visitors, delighting guests, delighting customers. And you can see it in this venue itself, but the quality of execution, what's going on, probably a great team behind it, okay? So there's a simple theory, and all theories maybe have some flaws, but a lot of them are very useful, around about a simple equation to drive performance. And it's this. It's IQ, EQ plus MQ equals performance. But what exactly does that mean? So the IQ is the intellectual quotient. And it's not just about someone's IQ. It's actually the degree to which they understand the role that they are to fill and the degree to which they are adequately resourced and competent and skilled to do it. That's the first dimension. EQ you would have heard of, the emotional quotient. That's not just about reading the room. Really, in a business setting and in a team setting, it is actually about having a broader perspective, to understand where your place is in the system, to be able to join the dots between you and other people in the organisation, the business itself, but critically, the customer, the visitor and the guest. And last, maybe less known, is the MQ, the meaning quotient, a very human dynamic. And that's that evaluation from one individual. Do I find meaning in my work? Is this worth doing? Does it make some sort of difference either for me or the people that I'm involved with? And it is proven statistically, qualitatively, quantitatively, if you have these dimensions firing in your people and across the team, you will have performance. It's driven by 4 key questions when we go and examine them. And that's what we did on a national basis, and we can show you now the scores relative for tourism relative to other sectors. But to understand it, These are really basic questions that I would hope would be useful within the organizations. There's two questions that are IQ, one for EQ and one for MQ. The first question is, to what degree do you feel clear on the role and the job you've been asked to do? Simple stuff, but is everybody clear? Very hard to do your job properly if you don't know exactly what your job is. IQ2, to what degree do you feel you've been appropriately resourced? Resources, skills, competencies. So I might know what you've asked me to do, but if I'm not resourced or trained or skilled, how can I do it properly? EQ, can you join the dots between what you do, the business, your other colleagues, and the organization, and the ultimate guest or customer? So I can get the big picture. How do I know how to perform? You know, the things that I can learn there. And the last piece, the MQ. To what degree do you find meaning in your work? And of course, if people feel that there's just no meaning whatsoever, their performance is going to be compromised. But if they feel it's worthwhile, then there's a big opportunity within that. So what we did is, for the first time, we examined these questions, 4 direct questions, rated on a scale of 1 to 10, to determine a barometer of how people feel about these dimensions in terms of performance. And this is what our research tells us. So on a national picture, we don't know if this is relatively good. The real numbers are actually quite high, is what we'd say, okay, on these different dimensions. We don't have an EU average. We can't say whether this is in relative high or not. But in real terms, these are high scores. But interestingly, they start to move down slightly. Clear on the role, people feeling equipped, 8.2 is high. Join the dots in terms of clear and impact is high, and meaning slightly lower. But that's perfectly understandable, because actually, in some ways, some people do not live to work. You know, it's part of their lives. So not everybody's going to derive meaning from it. So there may be certain limits that can be had in terms of the overall meaning that people derive from their work. Before I go into tourism, a really interesting thing to say to you is that when you look at it, all these measures rise with age. So the older you are, the more positive you are about these different dimensions. But it makes complete sense. Experience brings performance. I'm more experienced, I'm probably better able and capable. I have more understanding, more emotional intelligence, more maturity. So that happens. So what does tourism look like when we look at the national versus the national average? And this is what the picture looks like. In most part, it's line ball. Okay, so what we have is a good score relative to the national average. And really interesting, if you take that point around about age, and the likelihood is that the composition of the workforce in tourism is slightly younger, it is going to come down. But we do see some important differentials when it comes to EQ and when it comes to MQ. But the interesting thing to look at is IQ on 1 and 2 are arguably management agenda. Okay, do they know their job? Are they resourced? But for those people in the room, many of which you are leaders, developing EQ and MQ is a leadership agenda. How can I foster understanding connectivity within my teams? How can I make sure, or what can I do to give assurances or enable people to think that coming in here every day or whatever you're doing is a worthwhile doing and it has a positive impact? We looked at the tourism sector in more detail, and the spoiler is there's no significant differences. For statistical purposes, that's a group into travel, stay and logistics, entertainment, events and attractions, food and hospitality. There is no major difference across the board, just to say that. So there's a good, strong score, and we start to delineate it. We do see some variance, but it's not dramatic. But of course, it's all relative. And this is where it gets very, very interesting. What are the highs and lows when we compare the tourism sector relative to other sectors? Who's leading, who's lagging? So let's break it down. Clear on roll. Tourism coming in at 8.4. The leading sector, when you think about it, isn't entirely surprising. Construction. Not a good idea to have builders not knowing what their job is, logically. But interestingly, behind on the lower scores, financial services, in terms of clarity of the job they've been asked to do. Now, I can't rationalise that. Other ones I can rationalise it. But nonetheless, it is a finding. This is a nationally representative sample, of which, by the way, it's financial services and insurance, is included. So that's clear on all. So again, we could say about ourselves, okay, as a tourism industry, that's not a bad old score. On equipped, tourism at 8.1, good score. Highest equipped, again, no major surprises. IT, technology and communication. Resourced, trained, skilled, in a good position to do their job. On the lower end, again, Financial services. So this might be something to do with the digitization. It might be to do with the regulatory dimensions and all those things that are happening that make it financial services quite a complex space to be in, where resources are required, training, upskilling, and so on are required. But that's equipped. But then we'll have to look into EQ in terms of clear and connection and impact. A score of 8 for tourism sector. I think because of the team nature of tourism and the experiences you want to deliver and so forth, there might be an aspiration to really lift that up. That might be a space that could be lifted up. Construction comes in at number 1 again. But again, the ability to join the dots in construction is really, really important. Primarily because of safety. But also, it is nice to think that people who are building buildings, whether it be homes or hotels, actually have some awareness and knowledge of actually the end user. And the lower end is manufacturing. But that's not surprising either, because if you're on a manufacturing line, you may not want to join the dots between what's going on, what you're doing, and the end of the line or the beginning of the line. And in terms of deriving meaning, again, it might be a space at 7.5 for tourism. We might think, what can be done there? What can we do in leaders in order to breed that? Really positively, the most meaning is derived from human health and social work services and activities. And that's a really positive thing, I think, about what those people do. And also, just behind that is education. But again, here, lagging in in the last place is financial services, which tells us more about the sector and where it's at. So what? What does it all mean? Interesting numbers. But if I look at it and I sit back from it and say, stats are stats, well, what's really important is what we actually do about it. And the one thing I'd say is every organization is unique. Every organization. If I look at my own organization and I run that equation across and I know some things are good and some things are bad, I know what dimension actually within Genesis needs to be developed. If I think about financial services, and I've actually had the pleasure of doing lots of work with AIB over the years, I know, because I've seen it, the amount that AIB have invested in developing awareness and understanding their purpose and the meaning of the work. So I suspect that AIB as an organization scores higher than the financial services average. It's what you do with it. Now, the last thing I'd say is it's not just about the measurement. Numbers are helpful, but they're retrospective. They look backwards. They ask a question, they get an answer. Every time you've got the answer, it's old. So what I'd say to the room is, and for those of you who are leading teams and organizations, value the conversation over the equation. It's good to know. It's helpful to be able to ask yourself the questions. What's my team like when it comes to knowing the job? What's my team like when it comes to resources? Are they connected and understand what's going on, and do they find meaning? But the bigger opportunity is to enter into a conversation with them about how they feel, how they think about it, and what changes could be made to drive improvement. The bigger opportunity is through observation to see what is happening. Because then we can move forward and say, I've got a team that's performing really, really well. And one of the big reasons they're performing well is I am rest assured that on an IQ basis, I've got them in a good place. I am assured that you can join the dots on an EQ basis. And I'd like to think that my people have some meaning in their work. They operate with a smile on the face. They get along with one another. And this is a good organization that's performing. And after that, really, we can hope and I think expect a really, really high-performing, as it is, a continued high-performing tourism industry. What I'd say is, for anyone who are interested, there's more stats, there's more data, there's a summary report. If you want to delve into further, that's going to be platformed on our website and also the ITIC website. Thank you.